Ty. Dobra. To jest świetny temat. Widziałem już kilka rzeczy z tym związanych. Ile jest tak naprawdę drzew w Skyrimie? O, to jest Austin. O, jest jeden polski twórca, co bardzo mocno inspiruje się jego treściami. Ile jest drzew w Skyrimie? Właśnie muszę zastanowić. Wydaje mi się, że to nie będzie liczba w setkach tysięcy. Jak musiałbym je tak policzyć, obstawiam, że jest w okolicy 50 tysięcy drzew w Skyrimie, nie?
How many trees are there in Skyrim? Don't look it up, don't read the comments, just think about it for a second. You think there are more than 1,000? More than 10,000?
Ja wam powiem tak jakby na jakiej podstawie to stwierdzam. Próbuję sobie zwizualizować jeden kat z gry, na przykład taki jak ten, i szybko policzyć, ile tu jest drzew. Tu jest w okolicy 50 drzew. I ile tego typu kadrów byłbym w stanie zmieścić tak, żeby objąć całą mapę. No bo czy możemy tu mówić o setkach, tysiącach drzew? Nie, one by musiały być bardzo gęste. Więc od razu wyeliminowałem rząd po prostu tysięcy i rząd setek tysięcy, więc zostaje mi kilkadziesiąt tysięcy, więc strzeliłem w połowie. I na tej podstawie moje kalkulacje siedzą.
100,000? I'm sure it's obvious, but today that's what we're going to try to figure out, and we're going to do it without using any mods. I'm literally going to go inside Skyrim as a character, walk around, and just count them. Like 1, 2, 3, you know? Once I think I know how many there are, we're going to get someone to dig into the game files, figure out the actual number, and see how close we actually got. But in order to make this really fun, I'm not going to be the only one guessing. I've enlisted the help of 10 other incredible creators and one very special guest, each of whom will also try to guess the number of trees, and then at the end of the video we're going to see who was closest to the real number, and whoever was wins a $10,000 donation to the charity of their choice. Surprise! Now I'm sure you have a lot of questions like which trees actually count and what even qualifies as a tree, and I will answer all of those questions shortly, but first I want you to think of your own guess. You can even write it down in the comments if you want to, and then compare your guess to the very first number from one of our guest participants.
Hello Internet, my name is Matthew Patrick, better known online as Matt Pat, and I have been asked the question, how many trees are there in
Jak
Skyrim?
strzelę, to kurwa nie wierzę.
Yes, that is an example of a tree. Thank you for the camera work there, Steph. Taking it at face value and assuming, you know, if I were just to put out a number out there into the world, I'm gonna guess 83,762 trees. That's my guess. Good luck.
Okay, so Matt Pat himself, possibly the most qualified person on the planet for this particular question, outside of an actual forest surveyor, thinks there are 83,762 trees in Skyrim. We will see if he's right later on. Now, when I first came up with this idea, which was actually inspired by a joke comment someone made on one of my community posts, I legitimately thought I was just going to be able to open up Skyrim, pick a starting point, and then just walk around and count the trees by hand. You know, I thought it would take maybe a few hours, but with a little bit of patience, I could pull it off and have a perfectly accurate count within a day or two. But I was very wrong about that. Oh my god. How am I gonna... Okay, maybe that's like 10, 20, 30, 50, and then maybe like 50... There are clearly a lot of trees in Skyrim, way more than I initially thought, and it was obvious I was going to need a more sophisticated system for trying to count them. So I decided we would basically do 3 levels of guessing, each one more complicated than the last one. So to start, we're just going to eyeball it, you know, vibe it out, which basically meant, you know, running around forested areas, rapidly counting as many trees as I could, and then just finding a high enough vantage point that I could see far enough to guess how many there might be in a total area. Sort of like a weird, very immersive version of a jelly bean counting contest. I thought there were maybe 7,000 trees near Falkreath, maybe 8,000 or so around Morthal here, 10,000 down here in the Aspen Forest near Riften. It wasn't perfect, but I thought I'd at least be getting sort of in the ballpark with all of these guesses. But the more I walked around, man, the more it became clear that this was going to be an absolutely gargantuan task. 100, okay, we're just going to say 2,000, we're just going to call it 8,000. In this whole valley. How about that? And on top of that, I had to figure out exactly what even counted as a tree for this survey, which sounds silly, but it's actually more complicated than you might think. This was actually something that Matt Pat brought up in his video submission that I very rudely cut out for pacing, so let him explain it to you.
This might be a trick question, Eddie Austin, might be, because technically speaking, trees don't exist. the biological definition of a tree is just like a label that we've arbitrarily put on certain plant life out there. So this could be a trick question, and the real answer is that no trees exist in Skyrim because the definition of tree is a nebulous concept.
So after giving it some thought, I decided I was going to keep the rules extremely simple. Trunk, tall, branches. If it looks like a tree, I'm counting it as a tree. We're using the kindergarten definition of a tree. Got it? So in the end, purely based on vibes, I decided that my first guess was going to be 41,500 trees in Skyrim. And that's just from me walking around and eyeballing it. So less than half of MatPat's guess, which obviously makes me a little bit nervous. In fact, why don't we see what some of our other participants guessed and then see if that makes us feel any better.
My name is Juve, and I believe that there are 1,627 trees in the hit 2011 video game, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
1600 drzew, koleś insane.
Well, hello. My name is Kate. Taking an educated guess from the amount of time I've spent roaming that map for my entire adult life, it feels like at this point, I would say that there is at least 38,752.
Dziesiątki też idą.
Hello! Oh, that light's really bright. I'm H. Bomber Guy, and I think there are 45,000 trees in Skyrim. And if there aren't, there should be. Goodbye.
All right, 3 more guesses on the board. I'm not sure if that does make me feel better, but I think it did. So the question now is, if there are too many trees to actually count them one by one, which there definitely
Ile
is.
widzowie myślicie jest drzew w Skyrimie? Ile wy byście strzelili? I jaką logiką byście tutaj podążyli? No, let's go. Przynajmniej 2, no 2 to są ponad 100 000. Okej, wy byście w setki rzucali. 1 000 000? Nie, no ty kurwa, chłopie. Tobie to sałatka jarzynowa, chłopie, z miski to kurwa łeb przepaliła na Wigilii, nie? Barszczykiem to cię chyba polewali w kołysce, kurwa. Jak ty takie rzeczy piszesz. 50 000, 33. Czyli nikt, mało kto powyżej 100 strzela. Ktoś strzela 100, 150, wszyscy w okolicy 50. A może wy tak myślicie teraz? Bo ja wam powiedziałem, co macie myśleć na ten temat i was naprowadziłem na to. Kurwa, logiczne wam się wydaje to, co powiedziałem? Wcześniej też tak myśleliście?
And just wandering around trying to guess based on vibes isn't trustworthy. What can we do to get a more accurate count without cheating? You know, I'm not trying to lose my own competition after all, which is why we're going to move on to our second method of guessing, random sampling. I know it sounds really stupid, but according to science, if we just randomly count trees in a bunch of different spots across Skyrim, there's a way that we can use math to estimate the total number of trees in the game.
No tak, można byłoby to oszacować na mapie. Jak miałbym to jak najszybciej oszacować, to ja bym zrobił tak. Wziąłbym taki wycinek mapy, kopiuj obraz, tak. Podzieliłbym to na sektory, no nie, takie malutkie sektory. Wyeliminowałbym, załóżmy, że to byłby sektor 1, wyeliminowałbym wszystkie niebieskie sektory związane z górami, po prostu dla ułatwienia. Policzyłbym, ile jest 3 randomowych sektorach, czyli na przykład w sektorze tym, w sektorze powiedzmy tym i potem policzył, ile jest tych sektorów. To ja bym to tak oszacował, jak najszybciej. Po czym przyjąłbym, że na tych terenach będzie występowało 10% drzew niż na każdym innym sektorze. I teraz po prostu pytanie jest takie, jak duże sektory bym wytworzył. I to byłby taki próg błędu.
With a high degree of certainty. I know, I'm skeptical too, but apparently it's real. Basically how it works is we're going to use a multi-stage random number generator to pick a random point on our map, and then from that random point we're going to walk a randomly selected number of paces in a randomly selected direction. Once we get to wherever that leads us, we drop an item on the ground to serve as a marker, and then count every single tree within 25 meters of that point, and then take that number, divide it by the area of the circle, which is about 1,820 meters squared, which will then give us the average number of trees per meter squared. And then once you do that, you do it again. A whole bunch. The more times, the better. 1, 2, 3, certainly. 5 trees. Not very many, you guys. Not very many. I mean, we could call it 3 if we're being generous. I guess between those two, we'll call it 3. 6, I count that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, just for the math geniuses out there, I did fudge my numbers in the explanation there just to make it easier to follow, because we actually used paces to judge all of our distances, like literal walking paces in the game, but rest assured, the math does check out. I'll leave a link down below to the complete data set if you want to dig through it yourself and find all of the mistakes I made. I ended up taking 20 of these random samples.
To nie jest pre-watch, to jest kurwa myślenie. To wystarczy. Wy nie szacowaliście coś kurwa nigdy w życiu. Logiczne, że tak byś kurwa do tego podszedł.
and I noticed two really interesting things about Skyrim while doing this part of the survey. Firstly, the amount of trees. The game really doesn't have that many trees. In my head, Skyrim is this super woodsy game where the paths are always lined with forests full of wolves, but in reality, take a look at this. This is a fantastic topographical map of Skyrim that was posted on Reddit 13 years ago by a user named InsanoFlex, who, among many other fun details, mapped out all of the areas in the game that they thought had tree coverage. It's not perfect. There are places on this map that look like they don't have trees, but then if you go there in the game, they do, but it's more than good enough for this purpose. And it shows that only about 35% of the playable area in the game has tree coverage. And a lot of that tree coverage isn't even very dense. So that's interesting compared to just what I thought about Skyrim in my head. But the second interesting thing is the tree varieties. The majority of trees in this game are some kind of pine tree, and there are some variations from region to region in terms of how those look. But maybe the most interesting trees are these ones in the Reach. The closest real-life analog to them is something called a bristlecone pine or some sort of other wind-stunted survivalist tree, which can be found all over the western United States. And what's interesting is that these trees in real life are known for being extremely resilient to harsh climates, poor soils, and high winds, which fits perfectly with their in-game location of the Reach, which is windy, dry, and mountainous. Environmental storytelling. So cool. Anyway, now that I have all of my samples, how do we turn those samples into an estimate for the total number of trees in Skyrim? Well, all we need to do is take the average number of trees per square meter in our samples, which is 0.0016, and then apply that number to all of Skyrim. You know, basically what we're saying is, hey, we looked around and found that on average, there are 0.0016 trees per square meter in a bunch of different random places, so we're going to assume that on average, that's going to be the case across all of Skyrim. There's just one problem. We don't know how big Skyrim is. People online often say that it's about 31.7 square kilometers, but that includes a whole bunch of area that isn't actually part of the playable game. And it's also based on data pulled from the game's code, converted to kilometers by somebody that we don't know, that we don't trust. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying we don't know that it's right. So the solution to this, of course, is obvious. I had to recalculate Skyrim size on my own using paces. So that's what I did. And it took some time, but it actually wasn't super complicated. I basically just
no dobra, przejdzie jakiś kawałek, obliczy ile to zajmuje czasu, po czym włączy speedhacka, zobaczy ile mu zajęło przemierzenie tego obszaru speedhackiem, po czym włączy speedhacka na tą samą szybkość i przeleci tym całą planetę i to przemnoży. Dobra, to idzie zrobić szybko.
Used the grid that we have to walk between various points, counting the numbers of paces between those points until I figured out that these little squares were 221 meters on each side. Then I figured out how many of those little squares were actually inside the playable area of Skyrim, did some quick math, and discovered that Skyrim's entire playable area is approximately 17.8 square kilometers, or 17,854,707 square meters.
Ej, to wyobraźcie sobie, że... Poczekaj, co kurwa?
Or 17...
Cały Skyrim ma...
area is approximately 17.8...
Czysto teoretycznie cały Skyrim ma 18 km². Ile ma stary Pcim Wikipedia? Albo jakiś licheń, kurwa. Kod pocztowy 32432. Jaką ten Pcim ma powierzchnię? Tablice rejestracyjne... Liczba ludności. Czemu nie jest kurwa napisane jak duży jest Pcim? Dobra, Licheń, Wikipedia. Licheń, wieś w województwie lubuskim. Czemu na Wikipedii nie ma informacji jak duże są też, kurwa? Warszawa, Wikipedia. Warszawa ma napisane, Warszawa ma 517 km². To ile ma Licheń? Jak duży jest Licheń? Licheń ma bazylika w Licheniu. Największym kościołem w Polsce o powierzchni 23 000 m². Mnie interesuje bazylika stary w Licheniu. Bazylika w Licheniu ma 23 000 m²? Co kurwa? Ale jest dużo. Moja mieścina, która ma 3000 osób, ma 16 km². Jak się nazywa? Googlujemy. No trzeba porównać, stary. No, dajesz najprostsze porównanie. Skyrim jest wielkości, no. Jaka wieś w Polsce ma 17,8 km²? Nie, czat GPT, stary. Nie mogę znaleźć konkretnej wsi w Polsce, która oficjalnie ma 17,8. Największe wsi albo mają powierzchnię Zawoja 100 km². Nie udało się. Co będzie najbliżej? Przyszowa ma 18,5 km². Przyszowa, gdzie jest Przyszowa? Przyszowa wieś w Polsce. Obok Nowego Sącza, pod Krakowem, obok Słowacji. To wyobraźcie sobie, że tyle miast byłoby na terenie małego miasta. Podawanie tych wielkości w kilometrach w grach okazuje się, że nie ma sensu, totalnie. Ale teraz, co moglibyśmy zrobić, żeby teoretycznie rozłożenie tych miast było bardziej sensowne? Malbork chyba 17,2. O, to jest ciekawe, no bo musiałyby być większe, puste połacie terenu, które są niezagospodarowane, co by nie miało sensu. Gry trzeba sztucznie zagęszczyć. Gry nigdy nie będą realistyczne. Jaki to byłby zajebisty pomysł na materiał. Jak wyglądałyby gry, które miałyby realistyczne odległości pomiędzy miastami? I bazować to na tym, jak oddzielone od siebie były na przykład średniowieczne wioski. Kurwa, no to by musiało być pola, ale to by jak Daggerfall wyglądało, bez kitu. To by było kurwa jak Daggerfall. Żebyś szedł 10 minut i nic by nie było.
Square kilometers, or 17,854,707 square meters.
Ja się zastanawiałem właśnie nad tym, jak bazylika była 18 000 metrów kwadratowych miała podane, no nie? Ale to się przy kwadratach to się mierzy, w sensie to się przemnaża raz jeszcze, no nie? Właśnie ja się tak dlatego na pierwszy rzut okazuje, kurwa, 17 000 metrów, przecież jakby uciąć po prostu rząd tysięcy, ale to się, to idzie do kwadratu, nie?
If you remembered from above, we estimated with our survey that there are, on average, 0.0016 trees per square meter in the game. So we just take that number, multiply it by the total number of square meters,
ile
and we
wyjdzie?
get 28,006 trees in Skyrim.
No.
Now, this is a pretty reasonable guess, but I'm going to add 1,500 extra trees to this number because I know for a fact that there are some trees out of bounds in this game, like these ones here, and there are also some that are inside of caves or cities, which would not have been included in our survey, which brings my official second guess to 29,506 trees in Skyrim, which is a lot lower than my eyeball guess, and I'm very curious how it stacks up to a few more of our guesses from our participants. Let's roll some more of those, shall we?
Bandicoot here in a forest near Falkreath, and there are a lot of trees around here. My guess is 50,000 trees. That seems a little high. My guess is 25,000 trees. Final answer.
Hi, my name's Juniper Dev, and I think that there's at least 3 trees in Skyrim. Specifically 41,937 trees. That's my guess.
Hi, this is YouTube's Jacob Geller, guessing how many trees there are in Skyrim. I've applied all my literary and analytical skills to this, and I'm relatively confident the answer is 7,983 trees. Back to you, Austin.
All right, let's add those 3 to the board. It's starting to get interesting. So in theory, according to mathematics, my second guess here should have the highest likelihood of being correct of all the guesses here because we actually used science to get it or whatever. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't feeling a little bit nervous about it, which is why we're going to do one more survey, this time using the actual methods that would be deployed if you were doing a real field survey of a real area. And if you were actually doing a real field survey, you're going to want to be wearing the #1 underwear in the world for tree surveying, MeUndies. Welcome to the sponsorship. I love wearing MeUndies. I've loved everything I've purchased from them. I hear from people all the time about how they bought MeUndies on my recommendation and they also love them. Look, here is one pair of mine.
Dlaczego jeszcze nie ma sponsora związanego stary z bielizną? Moja głowa pęka od pomysłów marketingowych i sposobów zaimplementowania tego na moim streamie, nie? Bez kitu nie wyobrażam sobie, kurwa, tego, że ja nie mam takiego sponsora. Chodzisz w S? A co, matki pytałeś? Dobra. Dzięki, widzu, za wystawienie do pustej pod żart. Nieprawda, chodzę stary w majtkach. Czasami mi się zdarzyło znać z kilku opowieści, że byłem bez, ale by było dobre.
I've always told you
A ja w sumie jak wy nosicie bieliznę jako faceci, to jaką nosicie? Nosicie taką, jak tu była pokazana, taką przylegającą do ciała? Bo ja mam takie, ja noszę z Walmarta bieliznę, no nie? I no ja noszę taką bokserki, materiałowe bawełniane, ale przylegające do ciała, ale w miarę luźne. Ale nie lubię tych takich, bo są czasem takie bokserki, kurwa, z materiałów z koszuli, nie? Chyba nazywają boxer shorts. Nie, no to są stare boxer shorty to są te z koszuli, to jest masakra, nie? Nie, a takie przylegające ciasne to też niewygodne. Muszą być takie lekko luźne, nie? O, Właśnie takie by były dobre, nie? Tylko no nie jakieś stare Supreme czy coś. To są dobre gacie, nie? Są odpowiednio luźne. Bo tam nie można, słuchajcie, w tych miejscach mieć nacisku takiego, nie? Że cały czas ci to przylega do ciała, że tam nie ma ruchu. Nie, muszą być takie. Lekko, kurwa, luźne.
Anyway, knock out all of your holiday gifting needs today with MeUndies. To get exclusive holiday deals up to 50% off, go to MeUndies.com/AnyAustin and enter promo code AnyAustin. So as of now, we've got a good selection of guesses from me and others, as well as one scientifically backed estimate, which is different than a guess, over here. But there's one important thing I left out of that first survey that I need to explain to you now before we can do our final survey and reveal the winner of the $10,000 prize. I left out something called the margin of error. You've probably heard about this before in the context of political polls, but the margin of error is kind of like a measurement of how certain we are about our estimate, sort of. It'll honestly make more sense if I just show it to you in context, so let's just do that. The original estimate that we got from our survey was 28,006 trees. Since we only did 20 samples, our margin of error is pretty high. It's about 16,000 trees, which means that in theory, the actual number of trees in the game could be anywhere from 12,000 trees all the way up to a possible 44,000 trees, which sucks. Now, those extreme ends of the scale are less likely to be the actual number than the ones closer to the middle, but they are still possible. And numbers outside of that range are also possible, but extremely unlikely. Now, unfortunately, for some of the people on the board, that means it's probably highly unlikely that the number is going to be as low as Juve's guess, for example, of 1,627, and it's also unlikely to be as high as MatPat's guess of 83,762. So the question for us is, how can we make that margin of error smaller so that our guess becomes more accurate, so that we can be sure that we're going to defeat everybody else at this competition, which of course is the most important part. In real life, if you want to count the number of trees in an area, like let's say you want to know the number of trees in Alaska or something, you don't just literally sample random places in Alaska, whether it's a beautiful lake in a forest or inside of the Anchorage airport outside of the Humpy's Alaskan Ale House, and then derive the density from that. There's no reason to even include something like an airport terminal in your survey because you know there's going to be no trees. And this is basically what we did for our first sampling survey. It works, but there are smarter ways to do it. So what you can do is divide your whole area into zones that you suspect are going to have similar densities. The samples in those smaller zones are going to be a lot more uniform, and that's good because it increases our confidence that the sample is actually representing the true density across the zone. Using the forestry map that I showed you earlier, we're going to divide Skyrim into 4 zones to represent the 4 main biomes of trees that I found in the game. In the north, you've got the snowy pine trees. The west has the reach pines that we discussed earlier. The east has the beautiful fall-colored aspens near Riften, and then the center has all of those big green pine trees that we associate with cities like Falkreath. What this means is that all of the land we know is likely empty is not going to count, and therefore those empty samples won't disturb our data as much, and thus our confidence will increase. Statistically, this is way better than the other way that we did our sampling. Instead of our estimate having a 55% margin of error like it did before, this kind of stratified survey is going to let us push that uncertainty down to a 20% margin of error without having to take nearly as many samples as we would using the other method, which is great. So the survey itself ended up going pretty smoothly this time around. I was a lot more prepared for the monotony, and it was almost fun to fill in all of my squares and watch the numbers start to fill themselves out as we went along. Obviously, there were some difficulties in terms of keeping track of our position, and I made just tons of mathematics errors because I'm really out of practice of doing simple math. Someone explain to me why that would, like, why do we have to do 52 squared? I guess that's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Converting my paces into walking paces? Why would it be less? It wouldn't be less. That doesn't make sense. But eventually we fixed all of that, triple checked our data, and once I was able to look at all of the numbers, I noticed something really interesting. The average density of the forests in Skyrim, even when we're only surveying squares that we know have trees in them, is insanely low.
Takie streamy byłyby fenomenalne w Polsce, bo każdy by przychodził i by wiedział lepiej, jak to zrobić, nie?
On average, our Skyrim forests have a tree density of about 29 trees per acre of land. And if you don't know, an acre is about the size of a football field. A real forest, like say the Black Forest in Germany, has about 250 trees per acre on average, which is nearly 10 times more dense. In a way, this kind of means that Skyrim's forests aren't really forests, at least in terms of realism. They're a lot closer to the density of trees you might find in a place like Central Park in New York, a place that's built by humans for other humans to walk through and hang out in while still feeling aesthetically naturey. Which is interesting because Skyrim is a place that's built by humans for other humans to walk through and hang out in that's meant to feel aesthetically naturey. It's easy to look at this and go, see, Bethesda doesn't make their games realistic. They should do more research like Kingdom Come Deliverance. But I actually think this is kind of beautiful. Skyrim is just a big giant nature park built by a bunch of people for you. It's made for you. How neat is that? It does make me want to do a tree survey in Kingdom Come Deliverance too, though. I think it would be really cool to examine the differences between those two.
Jak myślicie, w jakiej grze jest najwięcej drzew w sumie? W Kingdom Comie? W Skyrimie? W Daggerfallu? Czy teraz uwaga, w Deforestie?
Games, and I bet that even games like that or Red Dead are really not even that close to real as well. Anyway, I've kept you in suspense long enough. Let's hear from our final 3 participants with their guesses, and then I'll give you my final guess.
Hello, it's Jabbo here, Annie Austin's long-lost cousin, and I think there's 32,420 trees in Skyrim.
Hi, my name is Maria Matters. I'm 5'6", and I'll be applying for the role of Tim Burton's Willy Wonka. Just kidding. I'm Maria, and I think there are 50,000 trees in Skyrim.
Hello, my name is Snakey with 7 Ys, and I think that there are... Well, let's actually think about this. Skyrim is a pretty big game. It's not as big as you remember because they did a really good job making it feel big, but it's still really big and it feels like there's a lot of trees. It's got Todd. It's made by Todd. Todd, 16 times the detail. Let's go 1,600. I'm gonna guess 1,600. I don't know if that's too low or too high, but I feel good about that. Thank you for having me. Any Austin, anytime, any place, anywhere. That's why they call him Any Austin. Also, he doesn't have an Audi.
What Jakey said at the end there, that is unconfirmed. He has no formal education in that field whatsoever. All right. A tough competition indeed. Here is our full list. $10,000 on the line. Take one last look at the leaderboard here. Think of your own guess. And now let me reveal my final guess based on the ultimate science survey that we did. So after all that work, we put all our numbers in the formula. We calculated the average densities. And then we applied that to the 35% of the map that has trees on it. And our final best guess for how many trees there are in Skyrim is, drumroll please, 39,840.
39,840. Nieźle, kurwa. Dobry, kurwa, jestem. Strzeliłem 50 koła w ciemno, a teraz powiedziałem, że koło 40 by było, jak tak mniej więcej pokazał obliczenia. Ciekawe, ile jest serio, nie?
In theory, out-of-bounds trees should be counted in this number because they were on the map, but let's add an additional 500 trees to account for those indoor trees, which wouldn't be part of the survey, which will bring our official entry onto the board to 40,340. All right, now before we reveal the actual number and decide who's going to win, 2 things. 1, I was kind of bluffing. I'm not actually participating in terms of receiving the money. Just so you know, I had a dramatically unfair advantage due to being a super genius. I guess that's Pete. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So even if I'm the closest, I'm not getting the money. It's going to go to the guest that was the closest. And number 2, as you probably saw, we actually do have one more person who submitted a number for the competition. And if I'm not mistaken, this person also came with an extra little message for all of you. So why don't we play that now?
Hey, it's Todd here at Bethesda Game Studios.
Ja pierdolę, Todd, kocham cię.
Just want to give you a shout out. Thank you for the videos. All of us here in the studio love them so much. What a great look at video game worlds. And they're so relaxing and so well done, so detailed. Understand there was a question on Skyrim. Matt?
How many trees are in Skyrim?
How many trees are in Skyrim? I don't know. I could go look it up, of course, but I'm going to go guess-wise 111,111. Let's see how good I do.
To koła ponad.
Now, while you're there, are there going to be more trees in the Elder Scrolls 6 than Skyrim, or less?
Are there going to be more trees in Elder Scrolls 6 or less?
16 times more.
More. Most definitely more.
I mean, come on. Not only It says, Todd Howard, come in on behalf of the team at Bethesda with an almost certainly wildly incorrect guess of 111,111, but he also says that the Elder Scrolls 6 will have more trees than Skyrim. I'm sure this is obvious, but I will be fact-checking that when the time comes. All right, the only thing left for us to do at this point is see who's right. In this envelope, I have written down on a piece of paper the exact number of trees in Skyrim using the exact specifications that we set forth in this survey. It was compiled by a friend of the channel, Timon, who you may remember from when I pressured him into making a mod for GTA 5 that fixed all of the street signage. So I really thought he was the perfect person for this as well. He also gave me the idea to turn this into a charity video, so shout out to him for that. And quickly, before I open this envelope, I know I'm dragging this out like crazy, but it's gonna be worth it, trust me. Before I reveal the final number, I just want to say to everybody who participated in this video, all of these astonishingly talented and creative and inspiring people that I'm privileged to call acquaintances, or in some cases even friends, thank you very much. And I absolutely include everyone at Bethesda Game Studios in that as well. Just like every hardworking game developer out there, I know there are many of you watching. You all inspire every single second of video that I put onto this website. All right, lock in everybody. Enough of the sentimentality, okay? How many trees are there in Skyrim? For the record, I legitimately do not know the answer to this, so the moment I'm opening it is the moment I'm finding out as well, which means this is all unscripted. All right, I'm nervous that I got it completely wrong, I'll tell you what. Wow. The number of trees in Skyrim is 46,430 trees.
Ja pierdolę, jakim jestem geniuszem. Ja wam powiem tak, sam bym siebie podejrzewał, że widziałem to wideo kurwa wcześniej, nie? No nie da się uwierzyć, że jestem tak kurwa mądry. To po prostu się nie da. Pomyliłem się o 3,5 tysiąca, o mniej niż 10%. Ja przewiduję liczbę concurrent playerów. Nie jestem jakimś kurwa gamingowym Nostradamusem. To jest niemożliwe. No nie no, możecie mi nie uwierzyć tutaj, że to widziałem, ale no przewidywałem na przykład kurwa plany From Software, że idą w gry multiplayerowe. Albo przewidywałem chyba Silksonga, no nie? Z 10% też marginesem błędu. Pokażę wam jakiś ziemi na giełdzie, no. Jak zamknę transakcję, to wam pokażę.
Which means that our winner is H. Bomber Guy with a guess of 45,000 trees. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. Fund. All of the charities that were picked by the people are going to be listed down below. They are all fantastic charities, so you can go look to them. And if you want to donate on behalf of your favorite creator, please feel free to do so. To every single person watching this, whether this is your first Any Austin video ever, or if you've been watching since Eggbusters in 2013, I owe you one, and I'll keep working to repay that in 20-minute chunks every couple of weeks for as long as I possibly can. Like I said, this is my last video of the year, and I'm taking a little break to catch up on, having a life. So I will see you all in 2026, and I'm Any Austin. Thanks for watching.
Kurwa. Nie, to było fenomenalne. Nie wiem, kiedy ostatnio się kurwa tak bawiłem na streamie, dobrze oglądając stare jakieś wideo, no nie? Myśląc po prostu o... Mi się wydaje, że ostatnio jest zbyt dużo mądrych kurwa filmów o grach, a brakuje takich po prostu fan. To był całkowity fan, no nie?